Either. This is Jordan. Jordan, we have a very exciting topic that Jordan wants to share with us today. And I've already, I think, stepped in and said the wrong term. So Jordan is going to explain to us and give us a presentation in today's, I guess, global climate and how we're all being very sensitive to how we approach things with various different people from various different backgrounds and things like that. Jordan is going to do some training with us and give us a presentation on some exciting things. And she is much better qualified at explaining what it is than I am. So Jordan, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you tell us all about what the topic is for today.
Hi, okay, thank you. So today we're going to be talking about personal gender pronouns and how to respectfully use people's pronouns, ask people's pronouns, why it's important, that kind of thing. So I do have a slideshow. I'm not a graphic designer, so sorry if it's not very fancy, but I'm gonna try to figure out how to share my screen.
There should be a big green button at the bottom of the screen that says share screen.
There we go.
There you go.
Okay. Yes. Right, so I should probably.
You can see it. Great.
Okay, cool. So, sorry, I'm just trying to find my notes. Okay, so having a little issue where I can't, so sorry. Can't see my speaker notes. Okay, there we go. Got it. Okay. So first of all, hi, I'm Jordan Neave. My pronouns are he, him, his, or they, them, theirs. I use both sets of pronouns. I am transgender. So right off the bat, some of you might already be a little confused as to how they, them pronouns work or why I use more than one set of pronouns. So that's understandable since a lot of people aren't very familiar with these concepts or maybe haven't thought about it very much. So I want to help clear up some of that confusion. So I'm going to give an overview of personal gender pronouns, why they matter, and how to use them. So, what are pronouns? So in linguistics, a pronoun is defined as a word that can function by itself as a noun phrase, and that refers to either the participants in the discourse or someone or something else mentioned in the discourse. So, but in our context today, when we talk about pronouns right now, we are actually referring to personal gender pronouns, or PGPs. These are words such as he, him, she, her, they, them, etc. So, oops, how do I go back? Okay. Most people that are having conversations surrounding personal gender pronouns just call them pronouns for short. Makes it a little easier. And so when someone says what their pronouns are, they're really saying which gender pronouns they prefer other people to use when talking about them. So, who uses pronouns? Everybody. A lot of people might not realize this because it's kind of like a new thing that they may be hearing about, but everybody uses pronouns because people have to refer to you somehow. So if someone asks you what your pronouns are, you can just respond by saying, my pronouns are she, her, or my pronouns are he, him, or whatever your pronouns are, depending on how you like to be referred to. And it's important to note that when someone asks you what your pronouns are, it's not an insult. It doesn't have anything to do with your appearance. it's just a sign of respect, because when you ask someone their pronouns, you're basically trying to be respectful by not assuming anybody's gender, and they would likely appreciate it if you ask for their pronouns as well. Sometimes when I'm meeting someone for the first time, being transgender myself, I like to ask people, what are your pronouns? Because sometimes you might feel a little awkward saying, hey, these are my pronouns, I'd like you to refer to me as this. Although I typically will just say that. Some people might be a little unsure. So if somebody asks you what your pronouns are, it's like common courtesy to ask them what their pronouns are back. That way you can both be sure that you're respecting each other's identities. So why do people ask and share pronouns? Well, okay, so you can't always know somebody's pronouns by looking at them. It's not always how they look or how they dress or act. So asking and correctly using someone's pronouns is one of the most basic ways to show your respect for their gender identity. When someone is referred to with the wrong pronoun, it can make them feel disrespected, invalidated, dismissed, alienated, or dysphoric, which I will talk about later. It's a matter of respect. So you just want to make sure that you are using the correct pronouns for somebody, because otherwise it's just disrespectful. Regardless of how you feel about transgender people, you want to make sure that you're extending your respect to everybody that you meet. So she, her, hers, and he, him, his are the most commonly used pronouns. Some people will call them female or male or feminine or masculine pronouns, but a lot of people won't, because it's not always as simple as he means man, she means woman. Not everybody who uses he, him pronouns wants to be called male. Some people use multiple sets of pronouns, and because they have a varying identity, which I'll talk about more later. So if I say anything that sounds a little confusing, don't worry, I'm probably going to talk about it later, and you can always ask questions at the end. So if you have a question about something, maybe like write it down so that you don't forget. So basically, some people also use the singular form of they, them, theirs as a gender-neutral pronoun, because those people don't identify as either male or female. I'll talk more about they, them pronouns later as well. But just basically, there are a lot of different pronouns that somebody might use, but you're probably just going to see mostly people using she, he, and they. And some people like me use more than one set of pronouns. And again, this is more common in people who are non-binary or identify outside of the gender binary. So maybe I should have done this slide earlier, but gender versus sex. So basically, gender and sex are widely agreed to be two separate things, and have been for a longer time than one might think. So gender is your social identity. The concept of gender is a social construct, but that doesn't mean that it's not real. Money is a social construct. Most of the things in our lives are social constructs. Most of the concepts that we deal with on a day-to-day basis doesn't mean it's not real. It just means that at one point, this was something that we as a society created. And sex is different. Sex is a collection of traits that are typically associated with either male or female. Your biological sex includes your hormones, your chromosomes, genitals, and other anatomical and physiological markers. It's also important to note that sex is not binary even. A lot of people don't know this, but there are a lot of ways that people can be born as intersex. So basically, when someone is born with physical traits that are a combination of male and female, that person is biologically intersex. They may identify later in life as male, female, or non-binary, and some intersex people consider themselves transgender, while others don't. There are actually a few other combinations of chromosomes. The most common ones you almost definitely heard of are XX and XY. But intersex people can have X, just one X chromosome, or sometimes XXY or XXYY. There's actually several different combinations of chromosomes that someone can have. And according to some estimates, it could be as much as 1% to 2% of the population that have some form of intersex sex, because there are so many different traits that determine your biological sex. If just one of those doesn't align, such as your hormones, or sometimes people are just born with ambiguous genitals, then you can be considered intersex. Some people don't realize they're intersex until they hit puberty, when they develop unexpected secondary sex characteristics. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of visibility for intersex people, and it's even common practice in a lot of hospitals for when a baby is born with ambiguous genitalia to just immediately perform surgery without the infant's consent, because obviously an infant cannot consent to something that's so major, and then later in life they often regret it. So that's an issue that oftentimes faces the intersex community. And next, so gender expression or gender presentation. It's a person's behavior, mannerisms, interests, and appearance that are associated with gender in a particular cultural context, specifically within the categories of femininity or masculinity, or typically speaking. This also includes gender roles, and these categories rely on stereotypes about gender. So basically, gender is how you identify and not how you dress or act. So no matter how feminine or masculine somebody presents, their identity is still valid and their pronouns should be respected. Pronouns can actually be considered a form of gender expression, which is why someone's pronouns don't always match what is typical for their gender identity. So basically gender expression, it could be like wearing makeup, wearing dresses, speaking kind of feminine, any way that you express yourself, and speaking masculine as well, and how you dress and carry yourself. So basically your gender expression, it's not the same as your gender identity, because I'm sure a lot of you may know somebody who is maybe a gay man that is a bit more feminine. They're no less of a man for it. So their gender expression, whether they may be more feminine, maybe paint their nails or speak with a different inflection, that's gender expression, or gender presentation. And it's not the same as their gender identity. And this applies to people who are transgender as well. So sometimes a transgender person, their gender expression might not match what you might expect from somebody who identifies as male or female, but that doesn't mean that their identities are not valid. So basic gender terminology. So transgender people, or trans people for short, don't identify as the gender that they were assigned at birth. So a transgender woman is someone who was assigned male at birth but now identifies as a woman. Transgender women typically use she, her pronouns and should be referred to as women in all contexts. And similarly, a transgender man is somebody who was assigned female at birth but identifies as a man. So trans men will typically use he, him pronouns and should be referred to as men in all contexts. Some transgender people do not fully identify as either a man or a woman, and I'll talk more about that in just a bit. And cisgender, a lot of people don't know this word, but it was actually coined in the 90s. Cisgender people do identify as the gender they were assigned at birth. So if you are not transgender, then you are cisgender. So you might not know there's actually a word for that. Um, if you're not transgender, uh, so just like transgender, the word is merely descriptive of the type of man or woman, person somebody is. So it's not any kind of a judgment word. It's just that we needed a word for it. Basically, we needed a word for non-trans people. So the Latin root of trans actually means across from, while the Latin root of cis actually means on the same side of. So it's actually really important that we have these words, because we need to be able to describe ourselves in ways that are not othering to some people. So it's not just transgender people and everybody else, or like it would otherwise it would just be like make transgender people feel like some kind of other that does not that we needed a word for it because it was so different. But no, to have the words transgender and cisgender, it makes these conversations more like on an equal playing field, because everyone should have a word to describe who they are. So basically, misgendering. It's when you intentionally or unintentionally refer to somebody using the wrong pronouns or gendered language, or even the wrong name. It is especially harmful to transgender people, and as it can induce gender dysphoria. And gender dysphoria is the condition. The definition was the condition of feeling one's emotional and psychological identity to be at variance with one's birth sex. Basically, it's very distressing, and it contributes greatly to anxiety and depression. Even misgendering people is even upsetting to cisgender people, people who are not trans, because if somebody refers to you as the wrong pronouns, or refers to you as a gender that you are not, regardless, you are going to feel disrespected. Anybody would feel disrespected in such a situation. So it's really important that we keep that in mind when we are talking to people who are transgender, because that is just the basic respect that we would want to be treated with. So the gender binary is a system of gender classification in which all people are categorized as being either male or female. Gender binarism is outdated and restrictive, even upon people who identify as cisgender. So non-binary people are people who do not identify as the gender that they were assigned at birth, and instead they may identify as somewhere in between male and female, or somewhere outside of the gender binary altogether. Non-binary people should not be seen as a third gender, because non-binary identities are diverse, and many non-binary people do not experience having a gender in the same way. So it's more of a umbrella term for a lot of different identities. And it's also important to remember that there isn't just one way that a non-binary person can look. It's not just androgyny. And non-binary people can be assigned male or female at birth, or they can be intersex. So non-binary, anybody can be can identify as non-binary. So gender non-conforming is denoting or relating to a person whose behavior or appearance does not conform to the prevailing cultural and social expectations about what is appropriate to their gender. Gender non-conforming people, or somebody who doesn't always conform to gender, are not necessarily transgender, but sometimes they can be. Now we're kind of gonna finally get into the pronouns and how to use them. So recently, it's becoming increasingly common to add gender pronouns to your email signatures. This helps reduce misgendering and foster inclusivity. So, why do people do this? So you've probably seen somebody put things like she, her, he, him, or they, them on their social media accounts or in their signature blocks of their emails, and it is indicative of what gender pronouns that person should be referred to as. Since there's no way of knowing someone's gender by looking at them or hearing their voice, the only way to know is if they tell you or if you ask and they tell you. So for a lot of transgender people, putting pronouns in their email signatures is a convenient way to show other people the pronouns that they would like to be referred to as. But a lot of cisgender people, it's a very good thing that when cisgender people can include their pronouns as well, because it signals to other people that you recognize and respect everyone's gender identity. So it makes transgender people feel safer and more comfortable sharing their own pronouns. Um, so in these kinds of situations, cisgender people, people who are not trans, they can lead the change by sharing gender pronouns. You can put it in the body of a message, in brackets next to your name, or somewhere in your email signature. It's generally helpful because sometimes there are even cisgender people who have names that are not specifically male or female, like a unisex or androgynous name, and it just helps people know if they've been in communication with them, whether they should be referring to them um, as male, female, or they, them. So basically, the the pronouns doesn't just help transgender people, although it really is a great step towards being inclusive. So, pronouns. There's like sorry. Um, so there's some common etiquette to follow with pronouns. I already pretty much went into why you should respect somebody's pronouns because it can be very disrespectful and distressing to be referred to as the wrong pronouns. So, how to ask pronouns? It's pretty simple. You can, if you're speaking to somebody one on one, you can say, "Would you mind telling me your pronouns?" or "What are your pronouns?" Or you can simply say, "My pronouns are," and then give your pronouns. And then usually, if they would like to share their pronouns, they will. So, in group introduction settings, you can also ask that people share their pronouns if they're comfortable with it. Um, and giving your pronouns is also pretty simple. You say, "My pronouns are he, him, his," or "My pronouns are she, her, hers." Or you can shorten it and just say he, him, or she, her, or they, them if you use they, them pronouns. And with anything, it's just practice. It might feel awkward in your mouth at first to say "my pronouns are," but it's just a matter of getting used to it. It doesn't take very long before you start getting into the habit of it, and it becomes very natural. So, gender neutral pronouns. Something very interesting is that the singular they, them has been in use for a very long time. This is a quote by Shakespeare from A Comedy of Errors. He's using the singular form of they, them, even though he knows that the person that he's referring to is a man. He's still using they, them pronouns, showing that it's not solely a pronoun that you use when you don't know someone's gender. A way that it's often used can be in context where you don't know somebody's gender, such as I saw my friend the other day, and you might respond, "Oh, what's their name?" Uh, so it's something that we already do using they, them as a singular pronoun. And if you're interested in the evolution of language, it's actually uh, a person. Oh, wow, we're almost out of time. Okay. I'm just gonna skip ahead a little bit.
Jordan,
It's okay.
Jordan, take as much time as you need.
Oh, okay. Um, So basically, non-binary people often use they, them pronouns. Singular is grammatically correct, and although it has been a point of contention in the 18th and 19th and 20th centuries among grammarians, at this point in time, it's like it is fairly accepted to use they, them as a singular pronoun and although some people might say it's confusing, anything can be confusing without context. The word you used to be plural and the singular was the, but now you just know based on the context which one it is. And this is a concern that a lot of people have. What if I mess up? It's okay. Everyone messes up, and transgender people understand this. I know people mess up my pronouns often. The best thing that you can do is to say something right away like, sorry, I meant this pronoun. If you realize it later, apologize in private and move on. You can just let it go, because it can make a person uncomfortable to keep apologizing. And people will forget about it. It's not some mortifying thing. What matters is that you're trying, and people can see that you're trying and won't fault you for that. So we already went through that. So some people might be saying, what if I offend someone? I don't want to offend someone. Like I said, as long as you are putting forth an effort and they can see that, somebody won't be super offended. And if they are, that really is just a reflection on them and not you. I'm just gonna skip ahead a bit. So when you refer to somebody else's pronouns, it's if somebody uses he, him pronouns, but they're transgender, it's very, this may seem obvious, but to others it may not. If you're telling somebody about someone else's pronouns, make sure that you're consistent with its usage. So you say things like his pronouns are he, him. You should never be saying things like her pronouns are he, him, because you're misgendering them in that statement. Also, it's when you're talking about people in general, it's good gender inclusive language to say they instead of he or she, because that includes everybody and it is grammatically correct. So I was going to go into some of this stuff because, it is Pride Month and it's good to be educated on these things. But I don't think I really have time. So I think I'm just going to skip ahead to a quick Q&A if anyone has questions.
I do have a question, Jordan, because I did flub when I introduced you originally, and because I think you were originally introduced to me using a feminine noun, the daughter of a colleague. And so when you choose certain pronouns, do you also change the noun associated with that? Because usually those nouns are very either feminine or masculine. Do you prefer to have that noun changed also?
That is a great question, and the answer is yes. When someone refers to me, I prefer to be I am non-binary and trans-masculine, so my identity is closer to male than female, but I don't fully identify as male. So when someone refers to me, I prefer to be called like John Neave's son or John Neave's child. And I prefer my siblings to refer to me as their sibling or their brother. Either one works for me. When someone uses multiple sets of pronouns or gendered terms, any and both of them work. You can change it up every once in a while, or you can just use one, and both of those are okay. So that was a great question. Anyone else?
Jordan, you are officially one of my new favorite humans. I just have to say that. I think you're so brave, first off, to come into a group of people that you do not know and to talk about something that's so personal to you. And I'm thankful for you doing that. In our family, we have a transgender grandchild, and it's hard to explain to people. And also I have a gay child. So this really hits home for me. And I just wanted to say, I don't really have a question because this is something that we have kind of lived as well in our family. But I will tell you that I just think that it's young people like you who give me hope for this world, because the understanding and the excellence that you all show in trying to accept everyone and put yourselves out there and be so open and honest about who you are and what you're about is just absolutely important to the future. So thank you for doing that. I appreciate you for doing that.
Thank you.
I think this is something that takes a lot of conscious effort also in utilizing, and something that we all need to start actually putting into practice within our own team to make sure that we are providing an inclusive environment to everyone on the staff and the people that we meet, because there are a lot of people who were potentially born and assigned a gender role that there wasn't completely right at birth, right, Jordan?
Mhm.
And so they've chosen to ask society to start utilizing a gender pronoun and descriptive pronouns to more match how they feel. And I think that's important. And this isn't just within our own family at IEI, but also the people that we run into at our client sites and people we work with. And I think it's very important that we start to take people's feelings. If you think about, like, if you were a small child and your parent cut your hair funny and somebody called you out in public the wrong name, right? So like if you're a little girl and your mom cut your hair short and some person out in public called you a boy, how did that make you feel when that happened? That is how I think the people who've been assigned the wrong identity and use the wrong pronouns feel all the time.
Yes,
Right? That's the thing that comes to mind for me as how can I most relate how that you are feeling when someone makes the wrong choice in calling for a specific pronoun, that gut feeling of, not feeling comfortable with the way somebody just called me a boy.
Yes,
Although,
and it can be even more, it can be made even more hurtful when somebody has been called these things their whole life and face a lot of opposition when they come out, and people saying, no, you're not who you know that you are, which can be traumatizing. And that's not even to mention the way that transgender people feel about their bodies. Just the social aspects themselves are enough that that it can be very difficult. Also, I'd like to say, if anyone has any questions, it doesn't matter if you think it might be a dumb question or you don't want to offend anyone. You get a free pass right now to ask me anything you want to ask, and I will not, I promise I will not be offended. So you can ask me anything. So if anyone has any questions, you can ask. And if not, I do have like one more thing to say.
sure, Jordan, how early did you know that it didn't feel right, the pronouns that were being used to describe you? How early? Is it something that, because a lot of people, at what point do you become cognizant of the fact that the pronouns society is using for you are not what feels right for you?
Mm-hmm. So I personally, when I was younger, I was under the impression that gender wasn't real. I didn't think that gender was real. I thought that gender was being a social construct. I was like very like feminist, but I didn't really know what feminism meant at the time. I thought that feminism meant that there was no difference between boys and girls, which we can see societally is not true. Um, throughout most of my childhood, I just assumed that it didn't matter if I was a boy or a girl. But when I hit puberty was when I knew that something was wrong, because suddenly my body was betraying me, and I knew that I didn't want to be seen as a young lady or a woman. And I had I as I hit puberty, I started to develop body dysphoria and social dysphoria when I was referred to as a woman or a girl, or the way that people spoke to me changed. And at first, I wasn't totally sure I was just if I was just somebody who was gender non-conforming, but by the time I was 16, I was sure. So it took me 3 years from when I started feeling that way to fully realize that this wasn't just something that everybody went through, and that I was in fact transgender. So I came out when I was 16, and I'm now almost 21, and I've never been happier with the way that I'm perceived. So it really makes a huge difference when people respect your identity.
The number one thing that families can do to help if a child isn't sure what gender they feel, what can we do to help them?
So, allowing and even encouraging people to experiment with different interests or even different pronouns or names, that can be really helpful. A lot of people might think that letting your child do that will only confuse them, but honestly, kids are smarter than you think they are. If they're interested in something, they should just be allowed to pursue it. And if they change their mind again later on, that's totally okay too. So if you have a child that is experimenting with different gender pronouns, the best thing that you can do is let them know that you accept them no matter who they are, whether they change their mind or not, and just respect the pronouns that they would like you to use. And don't treat it as a phase. Just make sure that the child knows that whether they continue using these pronouns or not, you will support them. It's very important to have adult support because there's actually a very huge problem in the transgender community with depression and suicidality, and the suicide rates are honestly just it's tragic. And there has been a lot of reports, a lot of studies that show that when a child has at least one supportive parent or guardian in their life, it greatly reduces the suicide rate. It's so important that parents listen to their children and just make sure that they know that they are loved unconditionally.
So,
Hey, Jordan, I have a question for you.
go ahead. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, my name's Dave. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Like Melinda, I have a lot of things in my family, people in my family with different things like this as well, racial and sexual orientation and things like that. I'd like to know, in your experience, what do you think when you are hurt by somebody who says something untoward? What do you think the percentage is of, make us feel better, what do you think the percentage is of people that don't know what they're saying and the people that are truly being hateful? I'd like to know, how much hate you really think is out there. I just recently finished a book called White Fragility. It was talking about how we're all racist. And even when we don't want to admit we're racist, or we say we're racist, we're probably more racist than the people that don't even mention it, because we've been conditioned to be white our whole life, and we just can't help it. You know what I mean?
Right.
We just can't
Yeah,
help
I
it.
know
So
what you mean.
how many people, what's the percentage you think of people that truly don't give a damn and don't care if they hurt you versus people that are just stupid?
Oh, it is. I definitely think that almost everybody, I'd say even like 99% of people, if they are calling me the wrong pronouns, it's because of a lack of knowledge of what my pronouns are, or a lack of education on the subject, or a lack of practice in using someone's pronouns. And I'd like to just emphasize that practice is so important. And even if it feels like wrong or strange, it's a greatly appreciated effort. And the more you practice, the more it, like, basically, I even mess up people's pronouns sometimes. I just correct myself and I try to move on. It's no one is immune to it. I have had experiences of people who outwardly told me that they don't respect my identity, or that they will not use the right pronouns, and that they will not put forth any effort. But those people are far and few between. And even my mom, who is one of my biggest cheerleaders, she still messes up sometimes. Some people just need more time than others.
Yeah, well,
And
my
I understand
parents,
that.
for instance, are in their 80s. They're never going to change.
Yeah,
No
and
matter how much they want to,
I don't
they'll never
even
change. And
bother.
even my brother, who's a couple years younger than me, not quite 60 yet, he'll probably never change. And I understand that you understand that.
Yes, and I know that there are like some older people in my life that I don't push the issue with them, because I know that they're very set in their ways. But uh but sometimes people can surprise you. Even older people can totally surprise you and make more of an effort than you expected, or get something more than
So you're
even
saying
younger
you have
people
hope.
might. I
So you're
do
saying
have,
you have hope.
I
That's
think
and
it's
I,
fantastic.
possible, Dave.
yeah.
I know in our family, my mother's in her 70s and her husband's in his 70s, and I thought there wasn't hope for them, but I will say that they do surprise me. Jordan, you're right, because often they want to engage in conversations around these topics, and they are willing to listen and try to understand. I mean, will they understand completely? Maybe not, but they try. And so I think it is possible for people to grasp, even if they're in their 70s or 80s.
Yes, and I know I gave you guys today a lot of information, and a lot of it might have been new for some of you. So it's okay if you're still wrapping your head around some of it. Um, but the most important thing is just respect people and listen when they tell you something or ask you to refer to them in a certain way, whether you understand it or not, and just practice asking pronouns and using the correct pronouns, and it'll eventually it becomes second nature. And like I'm not, I haven't always been knowledgeable on the subject. Of course, everyone starts from zero. So even when I first realized that I was trans, I still wasn't very I wasn't always very knowledgeable, but you just have to be willing to listen and learn.
Does anybody else have any other questions for Jordan?
Anything.
Jordan, we
What a
really
great
appreciate.
topic, though. What a
Yeah,
great, timely, and being its pride.
Yeah.
What a great thing to do. And I applaud you, Tiffany and Sumeda.
Well,
And
Jordan reached out, had a conversation with Sumeda, and wanted to come do this. And so we're really excited when we have these fun opportunities to actually dig into some more critical topics, I think, and bring people in from outside of the company to help us to expand on how we can be more of an inclusive environment.
It's truly an important topic.
Absolutely.
I've expressed to you how brave I believe you are, but I think it's brave of Sumeda to let you have this forum too, because it could have came across differently to some of the people within the organization, but obviously everyone's interested and wants to know about it and learn, and I think that's great. And I'm thankful to work at a company where we can talk about these type of topics. They're important.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. Well, thank you everybody today for sitting in on this. I did record it, and Jordan, I'll make sure that Dad gets a copy because he was interested in getting a copy of your presentation today, and then we'll send it out to everybody in the company because I think this is a very important topic that we all start to shed some light on, and it takes practice, like you mentioned, to remember to ask these questions up front. And to use the right pronoun so as not to make people feel like we don't appreciate and honor their identity. So thanks everybody. Have a great weekend. For those of you who got the day off today, have a good 3-day weekend, and we'll talk to everybody next week.
Thank you
Bye,
so
guys.
much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you for listening. Bye.